to everybody. I think most of the Sharks know Thomas, and hopefully our American friends can get on. Sammy's joined, Jordan's joined, Mike Benelli. Uh, we're all here now, and for Tim and Michael, Thomas goes a long way back with all of us here because he coached with me when he came to Calgary from the Czech Republic at the Olympic Oval, and then he coached the Oval team itself and developed a close relationship with Haley, and he's just gone on with hockey work literally all over the world. He's worked with NHL teams in skill areas. He's an exceptional coach, and I found the best coach I've ever worked with in terms of sharing ideas on the fly during practices, being able to, let's try this. And it's not often as a coach you're comfortable enough to take in information when you've got a written plan and adapt it. But for Thomas and myself, that was sort of a automatic thing, and I have to thank him for that because most of what I've taken forward, which would be new for Canadian coaches, comes from Thomas, and he's come full circle. He's in the Czech Republic now, acting as a development coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs of their drafted European players. He's coached the Czech national female team and just made an incredible difference in the game. Close friend of Darryl Belfry, who also works with Toronto. And I'm going to just let Thomas know his job, and I'm sure everyone on board is going to have questions for him. So, Thomas, welcome to the group. It's all yours, buddy.
Thank you, Wally, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. And of course, also official congratulations one more time to Wally and the naming of the arena after him, very well deserved. And Wally's a long time mentor of mine, and I call him my Canadian dad. So we certainly have shared a lot of time together and a lot of memories now. So I'm just gonna go a little bit explain what my job is and what I do, and then I just leave it for questions instead of me, going on for a long time. So as a development coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs, my job is to overlook the drafted players who are still playing in Europe and who in the future, hopefully one day will play for the Maple Leafs. So what the job entails is to overlook their development and overlook their everyday life, basically, whether it's in Finland, Sweden, Germany, Switzerland, wherever it is, to look at their games, their practices, their strength conditioning training, their nutrition, and make sure that what they do is as close as possible to what it will be expected from them when they come overseas and play either for the Marlies, which is the farm team, or the Maple Leafs. The job itself is very different than what I've ever done in my life because I'm really not in charge. I'm responsible, but I'm not in charge. That means the coaches in Europe are in charge who work with those players. So they give them the tactics, they give them the skills. Strength coaches and other people influence those players. And of course, with our organization, I'm also not in charge because there's head coaches with the Marlies, with the Leafs. There is Haley, who is the assistant general manager. There's Darryl, there's Danielle, who is in charge of the development program. So I guess the biggest challenge for me was like, what is my role and how can I most contribute? So realizing early on, I am not a head coach here, I'm not an assistant coach, I'm not in charge. So I'm not the maker, I'm not the doer, I'm not the creator, I'm not the guy who demands. So the best I can do is influence. So influence the Maple Leafs, influence the Marlies, influence our coaching staffs, just, to understand, there's about 6 coaches with the Maple Leafs, there's 6 coaches with the Toronto Marlies, and there's about 11 of us in the development program. So you're looking at about 25 excellent hockey minds that I'm surrounded with every single day. So finding my role would be probably finding the most impact I can make was probably and is every day the biggest challenge. When I go over to the countries that our players are in, um, the head coaches have their tactics, their principles, their philosophies, and also the stress and fear of everyday life as a head coach, winning and losing. So the development of our player is not at their foremost priority. Same with the assistant coaches, same with the organization. It's a business. All of our players are playing basically in professional leagues, so it's a business. So once I understood, and once every day I put myself into that role, I am only an influencer. I need to coach the players, our Maple Leaf players, through the coaches, through the organizations that they play for. So it is very important for me what kind of relationship I have with the head coach, assistant coach, general manager. The more people I know, the better it is for the player, the better it is for our organization. Now, one of the biggest jobs that I've spent the last 5-6 months is I have to be intimately in the know what kind of tactics, philosophies, individual skills are required from our players. So what is the newest in the NHL? What is the newest with the Toronto Maple Leafs, with the Toronto Marlies? What principles are we teaching? What do we expect skating-wise, shooting-wise, thinking-wise, read and react? So I'm learning every single day. I'm surrounded by people, and I'm just learning, because I have to take the player who is now in Europe, playing under different system, different circumstances, and prepare him as much as possible for what is going on in North America. So when he comes over, the transition is as smooth as possible. And it's never going to be perfect, because nothing will prepare you for the NHL or AHL as playing in the league. So constantly having the context of what he's doing on the ice right now, is it transferable? Is the skill or his thinking transferable to the NHL? He might be successful in Sweden or Finland or Germany, shooting, scoring, getting in the open, or even defensively closing, getting stops, angling. He might be successful, but is he gonna be successful at the next level? So that's my job. So I have to constantly watch every single day NHL clips, Toronto Maple Leafs clips, always listen to the coaches, how they teach it. Is this, and then compare it to what the player is doing, again, in Finland, Sweden, wherever he is. And then put it into a context that is acceptable for the coaching staff, and pick my time when they are the least busy and influence them through conversations, through videos, through my visits. Because the last thing I want to do is go to Sweden or Finland or wherever, Switzerland, and pretend like I know it all and this is how the player has to play. We want to have a long-term relationship with all the clubs, and we want them to be looking forward to work with the Maple Leafs. And I represent the Maple Leafs. So for me, the biggest learning is like, it's the least selfish job I've ever done. It's never about me. Like, it's not what I want. It's not what I think is right. First of all, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs, then it's the player. But also so important who the player is playing for, which is the organization, whoever it might be. And I have to respect, accept, Where are they playing? Under what circumstances? What their philosophies are, even though I disagree with them. So I had to learn to be, I don't want to say diplomatic because it's not true. I just have to pick my spots and influence and be very, very, very patient, and wait for my spot and wait how I can influence the most. So it's a lonely job too because I'm sitting at home. I'm not on the ice and I'm not coaching a team. So it's a big letdown from being a head coach of the national team and being in the spotlight all the time under pressure, and then to being at home and hours of video communicating with whether it's the European teams or whether it's the Maple Leafs and the Marlies. So I've learned to communicate a lot through WhatsApp and messages and Zoom calls and sending videos, sharing. So and then when I go to let's say Finland, I go there for a couple of weeks and I spend 5 days with one player and they allow me to go on the ice. I want to make sure I run the ice time so that it doesn't interfere with the tactics and philosophies of the team, but it strictly works on the individual skill and the individual tactic of the player that we need for him to take those few steps so that when he comes over to North America next year or in 2 years, so that he is ready. And usually those ice times would be so that I can leave him with a couple of practice sessions that he can do on his own or with his assistant coaches. So very challenging in communication. I'm learning a lot about how to communicate, how not to be important, and always asking myself the question every day, like in my morning meditation, in my morning preparation, it's like, how can I contribute today? What can I do to help the Maple Leafs? What can I help to do to help the Marlies? What can I do to help the player? So that all benefit, because there is a benefit for the European hockey teams if they get to know how the Maple Leafs play in the offensive zone and back check on exits, on entries, defensive sticks, and all that stuff. There's a huge benefit, and a lot of them understand that the connection with the NHL teams is an advantage for them and for the coaches. Some of them, of course, have their own ideas. That's normal. And so about every 2 months, I go for about a couple of weeks either to European teams or I go back to Toronto, where I support the development staff. We have a lot of young coaches, excellent coaches, skills coaches, skating coaches that are absolutely fantastic, and I get to support them with my ideas, with my background. And so I was thinking about it, Wally, today, how you coach through me and how maybe Father Bauer coached through you, and how those ideas of Tarasov and Bukac and all these famous coaches are passed on through generations, and Dave King and all these people, and how we are just passing on those experiences. And as modern and as advanced as hockey has gotten, some of the principles of offensive support and creative offensive thinking and 5 players working together that has been taught by Tarasov in the 60s is still there and still not mastered. And I think hockey has become tremendously individual. It's all about that one single player. We have individual plans, individual development plans, but it's still a team game, and sometimes I think it gets lost. And you see it in the games too, how the players play together and think together sometimes gets lost. The pass, the art of passing, the art of receiving, the art of deception sometimes gets lost because of so much individual skill development. Those are some of the challenges that I see and that get overlooked because of the new trend. But it's still a team game, and sometimes I'm missing it. I was thinking about you, Wally, and Tim too, that, when just being in a development camp, and this is I'm not even talking about the Leafs, but at the NHL level, when I watch other teams as well, how much timing has gotten lost. Arriving at the right time for the pass or for the shot, how we overskate the routes, how we are too fast, usually too early. We are too early. We are not leaving the space in front of us. We have one speed instead of varying the speed. And I'm not talking about so much. Players are pretty good at varying speed with the puck. They learn that that's a huge advantage for them. They can speed up, they can slow down, they can be really shifty. Weight shift is something we, discuss every single day. And you can manipulate with the defenseman or maybe two defensive players. But I'm talking about the players away from the puck, and that has gotten lost. And we need to work on that. It's something that I don't see many coaches teaching and coaching. And the gratitude that I have that I was able, Wally, and Tim and Dave King, and again, I can name those coaches that were teaching the true fundamentals of a team game, not so much even just hockey, but soccer, any kind of a basketball, any kind of game that's still very valid today, maybe more than ever. And that's sort of the entry. That's my job, my everyday challenge. The one thing I cannot speak about is directly what players I'm working with, their names and their weaknesses. I can speak in general terms, but I'm open to any questions. Wally, you on mute.
I've written down a number of questions, and I just wanted to, in the light of what you said about timing is lost, uh, I totally agree with you. We're on the same page, and even at the highest level, it's not as good as the game is not as good as it could be. It's great, but the disconnect between interchanging positions and timing in all situations could be much better.